Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope that went well. Hope you were able to make discussions and talk to each other a little bit. Had we been in class, this most likely would have been a little bit of a project where you guys talked in groups. So I'm hoping that being able to discuss with each other is uh, was helpful. Okay. Now, what I want to do is talk about the predictions and what the actual right answer is. I'm really hoping that you didn't look it up because I wanted you to go through that process, that thought process of, well, what do I think it is? And pull that prior knowledge up that you have and kind of make some just reasons based on that prior knowledge. So, without further ado, here is the correct answer. We are made up of 65% oxygen, 18.5% carbon, 9.5% hydrogen, 3.2% nitrogen, 1.5% calcium, and 1% phosphorus. Now, are you surprised by any of that? Some people are always surprised that oxygen is number one instead of carbon. You may have heard the phrase, we are carbon based life forms, especially if you're any kind of sci fi nerd like me. But a lot of people call us carbon based life forms. So you would think carbon would be the number one element, but actually it's oxygen. And that really stems from the fact that you think about beings being about 65 to 70% water, which is H2O. And so there is a lot of oxygen if we're that much water. It's heavier also than hydrogen. Hydrogen's really, really light. It's the lightest element. So that's why it's number three instead of number two, because carbon is a little bit heavier. Okay. So, like I was saying though, carbon is very, very important. And the reason they call us carbon based life forms is because um, carbon forms a skeleton of most of the elements, most of the molecules in the human body. We're going to start our unit talking about macromolecules, and macromolecules are made up of a skeleton made of carbon. And so in this diagram here, all of the points are actually carbon molecules. This is actually called a line diagram of a chemical element. It's kind of a shorthand way that chemists have. So there would be a carbon here, 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 all along that. And then what we call functional groups sticking off at different angles make a different molecule, make it react differently. Now, the reason carbon is so unique that way is because carbon has four valence electrons. Valence electrons are the outermost electrons. They're the ones on the outside orbital. See, there's one, two, three, four. Those are the ones that are available to bond with other things. It makes carbon kind of sticky. In a electrochemical sense. Okay, so it can bond with lots of things. It makes it pretty reactive. Carbon can form four single bonds, right? It's got four electrons, so this electron can bond with a hydrogen electron. This can form with this hydrogen electron, and so on. So you have four single bonds. Carbon can also form two double bonds, and it can also form a triple and a single bond. So this carbon has a triple and a single bond. So that's still four bonds total. This carbon has one, two, three, four. It's still four bonds total. So if you notice, the number of electrons tells you, in this case, the number of bonds that it can actually make. Okay, so because carbon has so much versatility in the bonds that it can make, it makes it very versatile, meaning that it can make lots and lots of different types of elements. If you think about Legos, if you have a piece with four connection spots, it's going to be a better piece because you can make lots more things than if you have something with only one connection spot, right? There's going to be less that you can do with that one. So the bottom line is that it makes lots and lots of stable structures, and that's why carbon, we call it, we call ourselves and most living things carbon-based life forms. So this is kind of an interesting thing to think about, just to throw it out there. Silicone is another element that has four valence electrons. So do you think that means that there's maybe silicone-based life forms somewhere on another planet? Because if you have carbon with four valence electrons and silicone with four valence electron, silicone and carbon probably behave very similarly. It's interesting to think about. So there are other elements in the human body, obviously, but oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus are the top six. Then it is followed by potassium, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, and sulfur. And there are still others in trace amounts that are small, almost too small to be measured. Okay, so this is oxygen. You can see that oxygen makes up a large portion of the human body. All right, and finally, we'll hear this word being thrown around. It's pronounced schnapps. What is schnapps? Well, schnapps is just an acronym for the most common elements in living things. And this is biology, right? So it's the study of life. So these elements, these six elements, schnapps, C is for carbon, H is for hydrogen, N is for nitrogen, O is for oxygen, phosphorus, P is for phosphorus, S is for sulfur. So CHNOPS. That's a shorthand way or an acronym way that you can remember the most important six elements of living organisms. So if you take just these six, they make up 98% of living organisms. And if you look at just bacteria, these six elements make up 99.7% of bacteria. So you can tell how just very, very important these elements are. Okay, so you might want to make a note of schnapps in your bill along with your diagram. Making sure that you understand that these elements make up 98% of living organisms. And that's really why we're talking about them today, because we're getting into this whole course on biology, right? And so we got to know, go down to the base elements. What are we made of? And these six are the ones that most living organisms are made up of the most. That's why it's most important. All right, guys, see you tomorrow.